SC16, your home for everything Ithaca and Nashville. It starts right now. Hello and welcome to the first official podcast here for SC16. As always, I'm joined by Salty Steve, but unfortunately we don't have Jonah Restuccio, our other host, with us. But hey, we're still getting out here. We're getting the podcast going, and it's exciting stuff, Salty. It's exciting stuff.
Come on, Jonah. Step it up. Show up.
Jonah not coming through in the clutch for us today, but we're here. We're ready to keep it going. We're ready to talk sports.
We are ready to talk sports. You know why?
Why?
Because we're better than Jonah.
Ooh.
Because we are here
Taking
ready
a
for
shot
the
at
show.
your co-host.
I know.
Co-host. Hey. Jonah, he's a great guy. We love Jonah. But
He is. I don't want to start any drama. Just let's get this started. Like, I'm ready to talk sports right now.
Well, I know I'm ready to talk sports as well, and I'm excited to talk about some NFL off-season football. A lot of stuff going on, and as always, the Jets. They're always a story in the offseason going for the Jets. Everybody knows it. There's never a dull moment in the offseason for the Jets. And I'm sure up in Cortland, New York for training camp, it's going to be another exciting training camp for the Jets.
You know, you never know what you're going to get when you look at the Jets. You got Rex Ryan always talking his game. You've got big moves, the biggest city in the world, New York. This is their team. This is the Jets. It's going to be a good season for them.
And clearly the big move coming out of East Rutherford, New Jersey for the Jets was getting rid of Mark Sanchez, the guy who led the Jets to 2 back-to-back AFC championships back in what seemed like it was years ago, really. He was such a big part for the Jets back then, but really faded off the past few years, and the Jets finally decided to cut ways with him, obviously. But Mark Sanchez, I got to give credit to Mark Sanchez because he was always a class act. He was never someone who, no matter how bad of a game he played, no matter how bad he played through a matter part of the season, he would come in, he'd show up, and he'd just continue to work. I give respect to Mark Sanchez in that aspect, but I think it was definitely time to part ways with Mark.
It was definitely time to part ways. You know, I'm a big fan of the butt fumble moment for Mark Sanchez, but really it was time for him to go. He's going to get another job in the NFL. He will be picked up at least as a backup initially. He could make it somewhere else as a starter. He led the team to 2 AFC championship games. This isn't some guy who's always been a scrub. He went to USC. He was the quarterback there for years. Now he's in the NFL. He was a solid player. He had a tough season, but I could see him coming back next year.
I just don't think it was the right situation for the Jets. It seemed like from the start they weren't really 100% sure on Mark Sanchez. They never really surrounded him with the correct pieces. The first few years he had a few pieces to really help him going. He obviously built off the running game and the strong defense that the Jets had the first 2 years. But really, they didn't re-sign many of those players that were on the team when they made it to back-to-back AFC championships. I believe there are only 6 players left on the roster. Now 5, I believe, after Mark Sanchez got cut. So there's about 5 players on the roster now from when the Jets actually made it to back-to-back AFC championship games. So it's clear that they were never really 100% sold on Mark Sanchez. Obviously, with the pieces they put around him, there weren't many. They put him with a lot of old players that were really aging. So, it was clear that they weren't really 100% sold on Mark Sanchez. And now they decided to finally part ways with him.
We're talking about how they weren't completely sold on Mark Sanchez, but is getting rid of him really the solution? Because they just picked up Michael Vick, even though they have Geno Smith. Is this another sign of the Jets not being fully committed to a quarterback?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because the Jets were going to owe Mark Sanchez an $8 million signing bonus if they were to continue on having him on the roster. So obviously there's a deal when it comes to salary cap, saving money, and obviously getting rid of Sanchez was a big key when it came to saving salary cap money. But, you mentioned they decided to bring in Mike Vick, an aging quarterback, a guy who's continuously had injury problems in his whole career. I'm not afraid to admit I'm a Jets fan. And I'm sure the more you listen to the podcast, you'll know I'm a Jets fan. I love to talk to Jets, and I'm not afraid to speak my mind when it comes to the Jets. And I'm not sold on the signing of Mike Vick. I know they only signed him to a 1-year contract worth $5 million, but is he really going to be that big of a pickup when it comes to having him teach Geno Smith. I know he said the other day, Geno Smith is the guy, but I know he's a competitor. He wants to compete and he wants to start. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see another quarterback controversy going into Cortland, New York this this training camp.
Well, here's what I see. Speaking of teams we root for, I'm a Patriots fan all the way. And when I look at the division and I see the Jets with Michael Vick at quarterback, I'm more nervous than when it's Geno Smith. I'll be perfectly honest, I am more worried if Michael Vick is the quarterback for the Jets. But Michael Vick is old. He isn't going to be around
Injury
very
problems
long.
his whole career.
Yeah, exactly. And even though this isn't the same Michael Vick that was the pre-jail Michael Vick, this is the post-jail Michael Vick. He's a team guy. He's ready to teach Geno Smith. At the same time, how many times can you go to an old quarterback in this situation? Did it work with Brett Favre? Now you have Michael Vick.
Yeah, it worked for Brett Favre until he blew out his shoulder and he wasn't able to throw the ball anymore.
Exactly.
And the same thing, Mike Vick, a guy with injury problems, a guy that's continuously had injury problems his whole career. So I'm not 100% sold on signing Mike Vick. I know it's only a 1-year contract. They're not taking that big of a hit on the salary cap. But, I mean, hey, you want some guy that's really going to be in there to really, if Geno does get injured, you're confident in him. You're confident to have him really go in there and know that, the potential of injury, because he's had it his whole career. You want a guy that's going to come in and say, I'm going to play. I'm not going to get. I know that there's always injury problems for every player in the NFL. That's 100% correct.
That is a fact of life.
But a guy who's been
NFL.
Absolutely, but a guy who's been getting injured his whole career, I'm not sold on it.
I'm going to move on a little bit from Michael Vick and the quarterback situation. I'm thinking, what about the weapons around the quarterback? They've brought in Michael Vick. They still have Geno Smith, but they need wide receivers. They need weapons, playmakers on the offensive side of the ball because their defense is always solid. It's where do they go now on the offensive side?
They have to sign weapons on offense. Obviously, they signed Eric Decker to, I believe it was a 5-year deal for Eric Decker.
That's a big signing right there.
Absolutely, but there's been people out there saying he's not a number 1 wide receiver. There's always people knocking guys when they're coming into a team. Obviously, you have the bias, but Eric Decker, he's a very respectable receiver. He's looked at his stats last year. He had more receiving yards than 2 of the Jets' top receivers last year. So, interesting stuff there. Obviously, when you have Peyton Manning, it's clearly...
When you have Peyton Manning throwing to you,
clearly it's going to do some justice for your team. But
One guy I'm looking at for the Jets, who he's still signed with his current team. Trades don't happen too often in the NFL, but it is a possibility. He's been thrown in trade rumors. Is Deshaun Jackson of the Eagles? Whether it's by trade, whether it's by they might actually cut Jackson for salary cap reasons. That's a type of player that if he gets added to the Jets, that's just a huge deal, especially after Michael Vick came over. The Eagles' former offensive coordinator,
Marty Morningweg,
exactly.
Deshaun Jackson. You got 3 guys who are familiar with each other. They've played with each other the past few years, and they've learned under the same offensive coordinator. So that's obviously going to be a big key when you look into the signing of Deshaun Jackson. Obviously, the Jets have shown interest in Deshaun Jackson. There's been plenty of reports out there that Deshaun Jackson is big, not a huge target, but the Jets are looking at the possibility of signing Deshaun Jackson. So it should be interesting what the Jets decide to do in the upcoming weeks. And obviously, we got the Jets in MetLife Stadium.
You know who else we got in MetLife Stadium?
There's another team in that stadium.
The New York Football Giants.
The New York Giants, and they've certainly haven't had a quiet offseason as well, Steve. You know that.
Oh, no, they have not. They started off last year 0-6. It was a tough start to the season, but they came back strong after that, and now they're making moves. Let's take a look at some of their moves.
You look at their moves. Obviously, you mentioned the 0-6 start, but they really built off of that 0-6 start. They really continued. They played well a little bit down the stretch. Obviously, not the best football the Giants have played the past few years, but you look at the strides they made last season. It's obviously a huge key going into next year. Finishing off on a strong start obviously is something, but you look at the guys they picked up. Rashad Jennings, running back out of the Oakland Raiders, he had a very phenomenal year last year. It wasn't phenomenal, but it was a very respectable year out last year with Oakland Raiders. Obviously, another guy I look at is you look at Mario Manningham coming out for the Giants. He's obviously familiar with the Giants. He's played with Eli Manning for a couple of years. So obviously the Giants, they're going out there. They know they're trying to hold their stance as the best team in New York. They want people to know that they're the best team in New
They
York.
want to be number one. They don't want the Jets to come up here and take that spot. They want to be number one in New York. They also want to be number one in the NFC East. And they're continuing to make strides. Not huge, big, giant steps.
They're
just
signing
little
respectable
steps.
players. They're signing respectable
Little
players.
steps, baby steps to build their team. And that's what successful NFL teams do.
Absolutely. When you look at Rashad Jennings, he's not a star player, but when you look at him replacing Andre Brown, it's a big signing because he's a respectable running back. He had a very good year last year with Oakland, and he's a good player to add onto that roster.
Exactly. Also, you still have Eli Manning at quarterback. Now, I know he didn't have the best season of his career last year, but he has had a consistently strong career performance. He's a 2-time Super Bowl winning quarterback. How many quarterbacks in the NFL can say that?
There's not many.
I think
obviously.
there's like 3 of them.
Yeah.
Brady, Roethlisberger, Manning. And that's it.
That's a very good class to be in. And obviously for the Giants, when I mentioned signing a Mario Manningham, it shows they missed out on signing Jacoby Jones. Obviously, he's a big guy that they were looking at, but they missed out on him. So they went out and they signed Mario Manningham, which is a huge pickup for them.
Yeah, exactly. And you combine Mario Manningham with who else they have in the wide receiving core, which didn't work out too well last year. But if the players come into training camp with strides, Victor Cruz is always a great wide receiver for this team. If they come into training camp work, they will get to where they want to be.
Absolutely, and we didn't mention actually the 12th pick the Giants own in the upcoming draft. So clearly, there's got to be looking to signing guys on the offensive line potentially to protect Eli Manning. He was sacked hundreds of times last year. I mean, he got roughed up last year.
And the amount of times that he was going to throw it and he threw it and didn't even get sacked, but he threw a pick because of the constant pressure on him. Just made so many more turnovers for this Giants team than they would like.
I believe the Eli Manning we saw last year was not the Eli Manning that's going to define his career. Eli Manning is a very, very good quarterback in the NFL. I'm not saying first ballot Hall of Famer for Eli Manning, but listen, this guy has the potential to be a Hall of Famer when he retires.
He really does. He really does. And if the Giants can get back on track next season, I honestly think they will, especially in the very tight NFC East every single year.
Look at the other teams in the NFC East. No one else is going out there and they're making huge moves. Everyone else is signing average players to really help build their quarterback around them.
The Eagles might be getting rid of one of their best weapons. The Cowboys.
They already got rid of Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie. He's over to the Giants now. Yeah. So
DeMarcus Ware also left the Cowboys. This division's come down to the final game of the season 3 straight years, and
I wouldn't be surprised if it happens again this
year.
year.
Exactly. Anything can happen in one game too. You see it in March Madness right now. You see it every single year in the playoffs, in the Super Bowl. Anything can happen in one game, and if it comes down to one game, that could go in the favor of the Giants.
Hey, you never know. I mean, the NFC East has been so unpredictable over the past few years. Teams have been playing each other so tight. And you mentioned it's practically always come down to the last game every year. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happens again this year. Teams aren't really going out there signing huge guys. They're just all having – Giants are probably, in my opinion, I think they're having the best offseason in the NFC East. They're signing very respectable players, very good guys that are really going to help your team win ball games, and that's the most important thing. And you look at the Cowboys, they're not going out and doing much either. It's surprising when you look at the Cowboys because they're – the quote-unquote,
they have no cap. They have no cap space.
They're quote-unquote America's team. You got to go out and you got to do something.
The Cowboys aren't America's team anymore.
I agree.
That ship has sailed.
That ship has sailed a long time ago. A long
time ago. Let's move on from the Jets, Giants, NFC East. What is a move that is not in this conversation? What other move do you look at to make a difference maker for next season?
You know, He's been taking some heat this offseason. I feel like people really haven't been giving him the respect that he deserves. But for the Raiders to go out and sign a guy like Matt Schaub, that goes a long way. And Matt Schaub, every year he's played 16 games, he's thrown for 4,000 yards. When obviously the injury problems are there. But let's be honest, the Raiders, to go out and sign a guy like Matt Schaub, only having to give up a 6th-round draft pick in the 2014 draft, that is a huge move for the Oakland Raiders. Also going out and signing Justin Tuck, That's another big move on both sides of the ball. So the Raiders, they haven't been having a quiet offseason. They've been going out and they've been signing some good players. So it's going to be interesting to watch the Raiders coming up in this season.
This is completely the opposite of what the Raiders have done in the past. They gave up first-round draft picks for one season of Carson Palmer, and now they're trading a 6th-round pick for Matt Schaub. That is a great decision by the Oakland Raiders.
And then you look at what Carson Palmer's doing now with Arizona. They might be regretting that move. But obviously Matt Schaub is huge for them.
All right, here's the one I'd like to look at. And now I know everyone's tired of hearing about the New England Patriots all the time, but it's
kind of ironic that we have a Jets fan. We have 2 Jets fans, actually. Jonah's also a Jets fan, and then we have a Patriots fan. So, we disagree with each other in games when they're playing each other. We may not be the best of friends during those games, but obviously,
we can come together and have a good conversation.
And
right?
we're talking football right now, baby. So
who doesn't love talking about football?
Absolutely.
And the move I want to bring up actually ties together the Jets and the Patriots too. And
Hit me.
It's a guy by the name of Darrelle Revis.
Oh.
Revis Island is coming to Foxborough.
Ouch. That hurts.
Does it hurt?
That hurts. That hurts.
I was talking with another Jets fan, and he was telling me that you will never see someone like Darrelle Revis have a bigger effect on a football game.
The best cornerback in the NFL. I still believe that Darrelle Revis is the best cornerback in the NFL. The way he can impact games, and you didn't really hear much from him last year because no one was throwing to him. You don't hear from a guy when no one throws to him, and that shows how good Darrelle Revis is. You're not going to hear about him because no one throws to him.
Because they throw to that side of the field, not even his man, the side of the field he is on a few times a game. And that's it. You take the football field and you cut it in half for your offense when you're facing Darrelle Revis.
I was lucky enough to be able to watch Darrelle Revis the past few years on my team, the Jets, and it hurts to see him go, but obviously the Jets, they had a bigger picture in mind, and they couldn't have just gone out and signed a guy like Darrelle Revis to a $16 million contract for 1 year. Yeah. The Jets have other positions in mind that they really need to improve on the offensive side of the ball, most importantly. Defense, they have a few holes there, but offense is the biggest hole for the Jets, considering that you look at them 8-8 last year, having the worst offense in the NFL. So, I mean, not really. When you look at what Darrelle Revis wanted, I can see, why.
I honestly think it would have been a mistake for the Jets to sign him again.
I absolutely agree.
And the only reason why, as a Patriots fan, I'm happy they got him is because they signed him to a 2-year deal. The first year is only about $8 million, which is actually not that bad for the amount you are getting for him. But they had the second year for $20 million, which makes them a likely cut next year. So it really worked in the Patriots' favor to get a stronger team for next season.
Absolutely. And, the Patriots, they haven't had a quiet offseason as well, especially the signing of Darrelle Revis is a huge, huge move for the Patriots, obviously. And Bill Belichick, it seems like he does this every offseason. He goes out and he signs guys that you wouldn't expect him to sign, guys that you have he does it all the time. It's just become a typical thing for the Patriots to go out and do every offseason.
Yeah, a few years ago.
Even during the season, they go out and do it. I mean, I don't know how they do it. It's ridiculous.
They get the most random people. They turn them into stars. They take
not Darrelle Revis clearly isn't.
Okay, well,
a random guy.
Darrelle Revis he's not a random guy. He is one of the premier players in the NFL.
Absolutely. You can make an argument for a top 10 player in the NFL.
Yeah. I'm sorry to the Seattle Seahawks, their championship team, their star cornerback, Richard Sherman, but Darrelle Revis is at your level. And he is going to New England.
Is that a shot towards the Seahawks cornerback, Super Bowl winning quarterback?
I may have just taken a shot towards Richard Sherman.
Shot?
Even though he won the NFC championship on the last play. But Richard Sherman, he talks a big game. He's a star.
And he backs it up.
Like it's nobody's business. Like I can't stand the criticism of him sometimes.
Sometimes it seems a little bit ridiculous, the criticism that people give Richard Sherman.
Yes.
I mean, people calling him a thug,
He went to Stanford. He doesn't fit the picture people play for him. But at the same time, there are people that are at his level, and Darrelle Revis is one of them.
I feel like Darrelle Revis, you can make an argument that him and Richard Sherman are the two best cornerbacks in the NFL.
Yes.
You can say I believe that. I've seen I say this because I've seen Darrelle Revis play a lot more than Richard Sherman, but I believe that Darrelle Revis is still ahead of Richard Sherman, no matter what he did last year. I'm taking nothing away from Richard Sherman. He's a very, very good cornerback, one of the tops in the game. But the most I've seen Darrelle Revis, the more you're just in awe of what he can do. The amount that he can do on the defensive side of the ball, it's incredible. And I'm obviously gonna miss him on the Jets, but obviously you guys get him now.
All right. So, kind of moving on from that topic right there, we're going to switch it up. We've been talking football for the entire show, but now we're going to change it up and go to March Madness. The madness that is March. This has been more upsets than I can ever remember this season.
It's been amazing.
The bracket this
Incredible.
year, for the first time since 1979. 1979, this is years and years and years ago. Duke, North Carolina, and Kansas all missing the Sweet 16. That's the first time in 35 years that has happened.
It's incredible, and obviously, right before we started recording, another huge upset took place as Iowa State, even without Georges Niang,
Yeah, so
one of
they're
their
three
top
seed,
players,
but
3 seed without their best player, took North Carolina. They took them to the end of the game, and they were able to pull out the victory, 85-83. That's a huge win for Iowa State.
it really is. I'm telling you, I could not have predicted anything that
A
happened.
lot of people were saying North Carolina was going to beat Iowa State, even after they lost one of their top players in Georges Niang, and for Iowa State to go out and still beat North Carolina, even with all the criticism, this and that, they were still able to go out and they were able to play their game. They took them right down to the wire, and they were able to get the 2-point victory over North Carolina. Huge win for Iowa State, and obviously a huge win for my bracket because I did have Iowa State going rather far, pretty far in my bracket. I got to throw that out there.
Speaking of which, how's your bracket doing, Matt?
I have 3 of my 4 final 4 teams left. I have Michigan State going strong.
All right.
I'm sure a lot of people do. Louisville going strong as well. Arizona, but I had Kansas, so they're obviously done. Great season for them. It's tough to see Andrew Wiggins go out the way he did. Probably you can make
player,
such a hype player, such a great player. He's fun to watch, and for him to go out the way he did, it's a little sad. But obviously, I'm sure going forward, he is going to have a phenomenal career in the NBA. I wouldn't be surprised if he does. He's that good of a player. He's so fun to watch, and the way he can impact the game when he's on the court, it's incredible.
I love Andrew Wiggins. He's a great player. I love Jabari Parker. Also out of the tournament, plays for Duke.
It's going to be interesting to see what he does.
Yeah, exactly. These guys, they had strong seasons. Their teams got knocked out early, but they can still come back and have. If they want to come back to school, they can come back to school. If they go to the NBA, they're gonna have good careers. Like they're gonna have successful,
very good careers. They've been. I don't remember last time I've heard players come out that have had this much hype like Jabari and Andrew Wiggins do.
I read an article about Jabari Parker. He was the cover of Sports Illustrated 3 years ago. He was a sophomore in high school at Simeon High School in Chicago.
Royce Harper-esque. He was also, when he was a sophomore in the game of baseball, he was on the cover. So
yes, Andrew Wiggins also was coming from Canada. He redefined his grade so he could come out of Canada, out of high school a year earlier and play for Kansas. Like these guys are very, very strong players. But let's take it back to the teams in the bracket. Who's still in? Who's not still in? I'm as shocked as everyone about what Dayton has done this tournament.
Absolutely, Dayton. They've been you can make an argument they've been the Cinderella team so far.
They are the Cinderella
They are
team.
the Cinderella team. They're going on to the Sweet 16.
They beat Ohio State.
Taking on Stanford, a 10 seed, who has also been pretty much a big surprise in this tournament, beating the number 2 seed Kansas. So,
we knew college basketball was even this season, but not that even.
The tournament is so unpredictable. It's as unpredictable as it gets when it comes to sports, and that's why everybody loves it. Everybody loves upsets. No matter who you have in bracket, no matter who you have, no matter what you're doing in your brackets, everybody loves seeing upsets, no matter how much it hurts your bracket.
All right, speaking of upsets, I got to bring up the Dayton-Syracuse game. Dayton beat Syracuse Syracuse lost. The curse of Salty struck again.
The curse of Salty wins.
The curse
of Salty comes out strong.
Honestly, that's why I think Jonah's not here, because he can't defend
think that could be?
Syracuse.
You think that could be? You think that's why he's not here?
Yes.
Because Cuse lost?
Yes, he is so heartbroken that Cuse lost, and because he brought me to that BC Syracuse game to start the curse of Salty. Move over, Bambino. There's a new curse in town.
The curse of Salty goes on strong. Well,
you can refer back to our first show if you do not understand what the curse of Salty is.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to the first ever official SC16 podcast. As always, Steve Altieri and our producer Pete. He's always in there grinding. He's always in there doing his thing. Without him, this show wouldn't happen. So thank you to Pete.
Thank you, Pete.
Pete's the man. We love Pete.
Love you.
Love you, Pete. Well, thank you. Once again, thank you to the listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in to the first ever official SC16 podcast.
SC16.
SC16, baby. For Steve Altieri, Peter Holzneck, producer Pete, the man, we love him. I'm Matt Rahemba, and this is SC16.